Shalom Aleichem, peace unto you. I'm Rabbi Kabo. You're continuing to learn practical, useful wisdom for the modern world from the ancient Jewish Talmud. We are on the 6th page of Ketuvot. Now we call on the 2nd page of Ketuvot, we learned that the custom in ancient times was for a virgin to get married on a Wednesday. We talked about why on Daf Base, page 2 of Ketuvot. There's no page 1 in the Gemara. That's just how they're published. Now today, the Gemara discusses why it might not be a good idea to get married on a Friday. And they say that's because the first intimate act between husband and wife will be on Friday night, and that's the Sabbath. And this act might create some bleeding, might create what could be considered a wound, which is something that may be forbidden to do on the Sabbath. So first of all, it may be a bit surprising that Holy Scriptures, the Jewish Talmud, a religious book, is talking about an intimate act in some detail, with some explicitness. This shouldn't be too much of a shock, because every topic of human life is contained within the Torah, the written Torah and the oral Torah, of which the Talmud is part. God himself calls the Bible Torat Chaim. That means instructions for life, meaning it's an instruction manual for human beings to live their best possible life. It's interesting, I saw an interview years ago, with Nissim Baruch Black. He used to be called D Black. He was a rapper who grew up in Seattle. He was a professional musician, a rapper, and he eventually converted to Orthodox Judaism, and he's now living and still making music in Jerusalem with 6 children. Thank God, Baruch Hashem. And in this interview, he said one of the draws that pulled him towards Judaism was an escape from the chaos, because there were rules or expectations or guidelines about every area of life. It was a way to have a solid existence. You know what comes next in Judaism. You know, you pray in the morning, you make blessings, you pray in the afternoon, you learn Torah, you learn what to do with your life. You always know what to do. And that can give a person a tremendous sense of security, especially if they grew up in a very chaotic environment where you never knew what was coming next. So it was a very interesting interview, really something special about Judaism. So yeah, everything is in Jewish law. Now the discussion here, I'm just going to summarize, because we'll see in so much more detail when we learn about the Sabbath, about Shabbat. There's actually a raging argument among our ancient sages from 2,000 years ago about doing an act on the Sabbath where you don't really want the result to happen, but you know it's going to happen, if that's forbidden or not, or under certain circumstances. And also, it really depends how you look at the act. In general, constructive activities are forbidden on the Sabbath, while destructive ones might not be forbidden. So for a quick example, if somebody takes a hammer and smashes a hole in the wall, that's destructive, and it's not a good idea, but he's not going to bring an offering for breaking the Sabbath. Whereas if somebody breaks a hole in the wall to replace a leaking pipe, that breaking a hole is destructive, but the purpose is constructive, so it's certainly going to be forbidden, and he would have to bring an offering for violating the Sabbath. Now, in the case of a man and a woman living together for the very first time on a Friday night, there's a discussion in the Gemara. Is this considered destructive? He could be causing a wound or causing bleeding, or it is considered constructive. He's creating an opening that will allow this woman to function normally as a wife and mother. So what is he doing? It depends how you look at it, and our sages debate how you should look at this act from a very scientific nature about, well, where does it fall into with the parameters of the Sabbath? But in any event, it has an effect. This is something that can be forgotten in modern mainstream society, is that sometimes people think this act between a man and a woman, this intimate act, is casual or meaningless. It's not the case at all. There's no such thing as meaningless intimacy. God designed the human body to release powerful hormones during this act, oxytocin and dopamine. These are pleasure hormones. These are bonding hormones. These allow a man and a woman to connect not merely on a physical level, but on a psychological and emotional level, to come together as one unit, to become what we call in the second chapter of Genesis, Hayu L'Basar Echad, one flesh. So the biological reinforces the emotional and spiritual bond between a man and a woman. So don't assume that there's such thing as meaningless or casual activity of this nature. There's no such thing. It always can have a profound effect, not just the physical effect that the Gemara is talking about today, but profound psychological, emotional effects and effects on the relationship. It's not something that should be underestimated. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, and please don't forget to like and subscribe and